Hello friend, today we are going to discuss about ISO 14001 2015 means Environmental Management System. Their requirements with guidance for use. This is the third edition of EMS. Then in this content we are going to discuss about what are the clauses in ISO 14001 2015 and what are the 5R in economy and what are the 5R in ecology and what are the types of resources and types of pollutions related to EMS and what are the environmental aspect and impacts and evolution of EMS standard as well as detailed explanation of class 1 to class 10. Now first is ISO 14001 2015, that is environmental management system, in which eco means eco, that is two terms. First is ecological, second is economical. Then both are the different terms. Now we are going to discuss about ecological and economical in detail, that is 5R. First is 5R economy. Economy means right quantity, right quality and right price, right time and right location. Now 5R in ecology, that is recycle, reuse, reduce, recover and remove. Now what is the resources means types of resources, that is two types. First is renewable resources, second is non-renewable resources. Renewable resources, that example is like water, plants, solar and energy. Non-renewable resources, that is iron, copper, etc. means we can generate the water, plants, solar and energy. We can regenerate again and again, but iron, copper, etc. cannot generate again and again. Next is pollution. That what is the types of pollution? That first is the air pollution, water pollution, third is noise pollution, fourth is soil pollutions. Now we are going to discuss in detail all these content. First is air pollution. That is air pollution is actually oxides of nitrogen and sulfur, carbon monoxide due to carbon dioxide, hydrocarbons, metal contaminants, suspended particles and emission from industries, emission from automobile, burning of fossil fuels and wood vehicles, that sea spray, etc. Next, what are their impacts? That is, impact is asthma, allergy, breathing problems, affects normal growth and yield of different vegetations, improving process technology in industries, reduction in consumption of fuel resources, uses of alternate sources. We can change it, use of non-conventional energy resources and afforestation program. That pollution can be prevented. Means air pollution, their impacts is asthma, allergy, breathing problem, affect normal growth, and we can improve by improving process technology in industries, by reduction in consumption of fossil fuel, uses of alternative fuels, uses of non-conventional energy resources and afforestation program. Now what is water pollution? Water pollution resources are marine water is 97% and fresh water is approximately 3%. Now in fresh water, ice caps is 75, groundwater is only 24.967%, surface water is 0.033%. Now water pollutions, their sources of pollution, actually untreated effluents generating from industrial activity like industrial waste and effluent generated from domestic activity like domestic waste, like runoff water from agricultural ads like agriculture based means industrial waste, domestic waste and agriculture waste are the sources of the water pollution. Now, types of pollutions, that is heavy metal and other chemicals, and nitrite, phosphate and insecticide are pesticides pollutions. Now, what are the effect of water pollution that causes the cholera, malaria, growth of yield of vegetations, affect aquatic ecosystems. Now, how we can control water pollution? Like pollution control at source, and as well as suitable treatment on the effluent, and recycling, by recycling the water, by reuse, by recovery of the wastewater. Next is noise pollution. Then sources of the noise pollution is industrial activities, automobile activities like road, rail, air traffic, and next is community activity. Now, what are the effect of the noise pollution? That temporary deafness. Next is partial completion deafness, sleep interference, irritations, headache, stress. These are the effect of pollution. Now, how we can control the noise pollution? By control of the pollution, periodic maintenance of equipment, uses of silencer, muffler, soundproofing. Next is uses of earplugs, and general awareness to community residents, and growing of vegetations near the noise sources. Now, next is the soil pollution, and sources of the soil pollution is release of effluents, solid waste, uses of excess fertilizer, insecticides, improper agriculture practices are the major sources of the soil pollution. What are their effect of the soil pollution? First is loss of fertile land. Second is affect growth of the plant on contaminated soil. Now, next is global issues, means global environmental issues. What are the global environmental issues? First is global warming, second is acid rain, third is ozone depletions, fourth is desertifications, and fifth is deforestation. Desertification, deforestation, ozone depletion, acid rain, and global warming. These are the 5 global environmental issues. Now, first is global warming or greenhouse effect, that is GHE effect. Some of the gases that causing the global warming, that is the carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons that are used in the AC. Now, these are the main gases that causing the global warming. That their sources of global warming is like fossil fuels based power plants, emission from automobile industries, emission from industries, other industries, and burning of fossil fuels and hydrocarbons. Next is global warming or greenhouse effect. What are their impacts of? Actually, temperature reduces minus 2.7 degree by 21st 100, means year. Now, melt ice cap, Iceland submerged underwater, more cyclones, drought, etc. That's are the major impacts of the global. How we can control it? Control of global warming by reduce consumption of fossil fuel based energy. Second is improve efficiency, like fossil fuel based energy productions, reduce emission of GHG from automobile industries, and promote renewable energy technology, and reduce deforestation. Now, next is acid rain. And what are the impacts of acid rain? Acid rain can damage the plant, retard their growth rate, increase acidity of the soil, and causes excessive damage to the building. Thus, like example is Taj Mahal. And next is the affect pH value of water in lake, ponds and imbalance. In Taj Mahal, due to the acid rain, their appearances changes. Now acid rain also increases the acidity of the soil, their growth, growth, and affect pH value of the waters in lake, ponds and imbalance, create imbalance. Next is controlling of acid, reduce consumption of fossil fuel waste energy, like fossil fuel waste energy production. We can improve their efficiency, reduce acidic emission from automobile industries and promote renewable energy technology. Now what are the sources of the ozone layer depletion substances? Means ozone layer depletions, what are the major sources? First is air conditioner, second is refrigerator, third is fire extinguishers, fourth is perfume, and fifth one is water coolers. These are the major sources of the ozone depletion substances. What are the effect of ozone depletions? First is exposure to UV radiation, ultraviolet radiation triggers generate variations, affect immune system of the organism and damage eye, can lead to skin cancer. These are the major effect of ozone layer depletions. Next is control of ozone depletions, that is by the reduction in consumption of ozone depletion substances and uses of substitutes of CFCs. Next is desertification. Desertification is the phenomena during which fertile land become degraded due to natural factors that can be observed in the borders of the desert region. Now next is the deforestation, means excessive felling of the tree leads to deforestation. Then next is the environmental management system, means ISO 14001 2015 requirements and guidance to use. Now what is the EMS, environmental management system? This is a system of managing environment, which means to ensure effective use of resources and prevention of pollution. Next is management, commitment to compliance with application of law and regulations and opportunity for continual improvement of environmental performance or objectives. Next is evolution of EMS standard. Now we go in history, that is the in 1992 BS, British standard, that is 7750 standard, and in after that 1993 EC, that is EMAS standard was there. In 1993 again Canadian standard was there, and in 1993 again appointment of TC 207 by ISO, and in 1995 draft of ISO 14001 standard was published. Now 1996 ISO 14001 standard first time published, and in 2004 second edition of ISO 14001 published, and currently 2015 third edition of ISO 14001 published. Means we are now using the third edition of ISO 14001 that is published in 2015 year. Now basis of ISO 14000 system, that is resource conservation and pollution prevention. These are the two major basis of the ISO 14000. That is what does ISO 14001 requirement to do? Review environmental status and define policy, conservation, prevention, continuous improvement, identify aspect and impact, and comply with law and regulation, documentation, record keeping, training, and all employee involvement, and evolution of system through audits. Now, what are the clauses of ISO 14001? That is in high level structure. And what are the clauses? That is total 10 clauses. That first clause is scope, second is normative references, third is terms and definitions, and fourth one is context of the organization, fifth one is leadership, sixth is planning, seventh is support, and eighth is operation, ninth is performance evaluation, and 10th is improvement. Now, this is the summary of the class number 4th to class number 10th. In class number 4, context of the organization. First we go 4.1, that is understanding the organization and its context, and 4.2 understanding the needs and expectations of interested party, 4.3 determining the scope of the EMS, and 4.4 that is environmental management system. And in fifth, that is leadership, we will study in detail 5.1 that is leadership and commitment, and 5.2 that is environmental policy, and 5.3 that is organization role, responsibility, and authority. In 6 we are in planning phase. That 6.1 is the action to address risk and opportunity, 6.11 is that is general requirements, 6.12 that is environmental aspect and related impacts, and 6.13 that is compliance obligation, 6.14 is the planning actions, and 6.2 that is the environmental objective and planning to achieve them, 6.21 that is environmental objectives, 6.22 that is prevent planning action to achieve environmental objectives. Like 7th is the support, that is 7.1 is resources requirement, 7.2 is competency, 7.3 is awareness, 7.4 is communication, and 7.41 that is general requirement in communication, 7.42 that is the internal communication, 7.43 that external communication, and 7.5 that is documented information, 7.51 is general requirement, 7.52 is that is creating and updating documented information, and 7.53 that is control of documented information. Now 8 class is operation, that is 8.1 is the operational planning and control, and 8.2 is emergency preparedness and responses. 9th is performance evaluation, that 9.1 is monitoring, measurement, and evaluations, and 9.11 is general requirement, 9.12 is evolution of the compliances, evaluation of compliances, and 9.2 is internal audits, and 9.21 is internal audits general requirement, 9.22 is internal audit program, and 9.3 is management review, and 10th is the improvement. 10th 1 is the general requirement related to improvement, and 10.2 is non-conformity and corrective action, and 10.3 is the continual improvement. Now first is the scope, means in ISO 14001 2015 what is the scope, means what are the first class requirement. This international standard specified requirement for an environmental management system to enable an organization to develop and implement a policy and objective which take into account legal requirement and other requirement to which the organization subscribes and information about significant environmental aspects. Means this standard, international standard, specify the requirement of an environmental management system, means related to EMS, that to develop and implement a policy, a objective which take account legal requirement and other requirements and information about significant environmental aspects. Means policy, objective, legal and other requirement, and environmental aspect. There 4 things we need to focus more detail. Now, next is the normative references, that for this standard ISO 14001 2015 no normative references are cited. Next is terms and definition that are used in ISO 14001 2015. That first is environment. Environment means surrounding in which an organization operates, including air, water, land, natural resources, flora, fauna, humans, and their interrelations. Next is what are the aspect of environmental, means environmental aspect like element of organization's activity or product or services that can interact with the environment. Aspect means interact with the environmental. And what are the environmental impacts, means many changes to the, means any changes to the environment, that is the impact, means whether adverse or beneficial, wholly or partially resulting from organizational environmental aspect, means due to environmental aspect, means if we are doing any activity related to product or services that interact with environment, then what can be changes to environment, whether that were the adverse or beneficial, that we need to study, that is the environmental impacts. Now, next is the context of the organization. Now, in context of the organization, first subclasses, that is 4.1, that is understanding the organization and its context. Context means reference, that is internal issues or external issues. Now, the organization shall determine the external and internal issues that are relevant to purpose and that affect its ability to achieve the intended outcome of the EMS. Such issues shall include environmental conditions being affected by a capable of affecting the organization. Now, examples of internal and external issues is, first is the environmental condition related to climate, air quality, water quality, land usage, existing contaminations, natural resources availability, and biodiversity that can either affect the organization purpose or be affected by its environmental aspect. That is the environmental related to climate. Now, next is the external culture, that is social, political, legal, regulatory requirement, financial requirement, technological requirement, economic, and natural and competitive circumstances, whether international, national, regional, or local. That are the external culture. Now, next is the internal characteristic or conditions of the organization, that is the activity, product, services, strategic direction, culture, capability, people, knowledge, process, system, that is the internal characteristic. Now, next is the a little example of the internal issue and external issue, that leadership supports resource availability, key skills, that is technology, that is internal issues, on-site pollution, water quality, contaminated land, waste disposal, that is internal issue. Now, external issues is sector standard like ISO 14045, corporate standard, legal requirements, what are the legal requirement, other requirement, that are the external issues, and like climate change, weather, floods, like that. Next is the subclass is 4.2, that is understanding the needs and expectations of interested party. Now, interested party, that is the actually involved in, that can be affected or be affected by decision or activity, that is the interested party. The organization shall determine the interested party that are relevant to the environmental management system. And next is the relevant needs and expectations, that is requirement of that interested party. Which of these needs and expectations become its compliance obligation? Means we need to focus on interested party and their needs and expectations, and related to need and needs and expectations of interested parties and also related to compliance obligation. Next is the examples of interested party. That first is the internal interested party, that is workers, unions, top managements like board of directors, like management teams, like some are the suppliers, that are the internal interested parties. And supplier is external actually. And next is the external interested party, that is the certification body, like trainers, like supplier, customers, that are the external bodies, like community. And some is media. Yes. Next is the example, that is example of interested party, their needs and expectations. Relationship. First is the example of the interested party, that is the investors. Example of needs and expectation: expect the organization to manage its risk and opportunity that can affect an investment. Next is the non-government organization, that is NGOs. Their needs is the organization cooperation to achieve the NGO environmental goals. Next is the neighbors and the community. The experts socially accept the performance, honesty and integrity. These are the some examples. Now next is the determining the scope of the environmental management system. 4.1, 4.2, 6.1 and 6.2 we will discuss again a separate video by the example, how we can identify the internal issues, external issues and interested party, their needs and expectations, what we can do the SWOT analysis. That will do a separate video. Already I have discussed in ISO 9001 and IATF 16949 in details, but for the EMS related also I will be discussed in a separate video. 4.3, that determining the scope of the environmental management system, means the organization shall determine the boundaries and applicability of the environmental management system. Means what are the external and internal issues, and what are the compliance requirement, and what are the organization unit function physical boundaries and its activity, products, services and its authority and ability to exercise control influences. The scope that shall be maintained and documented information are available to interested party on request. Next subclass is, that is 4.4, that is environmental management system. Now, to achieve the intended outcome, including enhancing its environmental performance, the organization shall establish, implement, maintain and continually improve an environmental management system, including their processes needed and their interaction in accordance with the requirement of this international standard. The organization shall consider knowledge gain in 4.1 clause and 4.2 clause, whether stabilizing and maintaining the environmental management system. Now, in 4.4, we should make manual, procedure and turtle diagram related to environmental management system. Now, what are the 4 level of documents? That level first is the policy, organization policy related to quality, environmental, safety policy. Now, next level 2 is procedure, and level 3 is work instruction or practices, and level 4 is record. Now, policy means why status once, means define what will be done, and procedure who, when, where will be done, and work instruction or practices, that is how it will done, and records are proof, that is evidences of the activity performed. Now, next class is leadership. What is the leadership and commitment? That covers in 5.1 class, that the management shall demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to the environmental management system. First is taking accountability of the effectiveness of EMS. Second is ensuring that the environmental policy, environmental objective and established are compatible with the strategic direction and context of the organization. And third is the ensuring the integration of EMS requirement into the organization business processes and ensuring that the resources needed for EMS are available or not, and communicating the importance of effective environmental management system conforming to EMS requirement. And next is ensuring that the environmental management system achieves its intended outcome. Now next is the directing and supporting person to contributing the effective of EMS. Next is promoting continual improvement and supporting other relevant management roles to demonstrate their leadership as its organization exists. Now, reference to business in this international standard can be interpreted broadly to means those activities that are core to the purpose of the organization existence. Now, next class is 5.2, that is environmental policy. Now, top management shall establish, implement and maintain an environmental policy that within the defined scope of its schemes. Means top management shall establish environmental policy. Who is the who made the environmental policy? That is top management. Is this policy is appropriate of the purpose and context of the organization, including its nature, scale and environmental impacts of activity, product and services. Now second is provide framework of setting environmental objectives. Third is including a commitment to the protection of the environmental, including prevention of the pollution. These terms need to mention in environmental policy, including prevention of policy, other specific requirement relevant to the context of the organization. Now, next is including a commitment to fulfill its compliance obligations. Next commitment is to continual improvement of the EMS. Means environmental policy, we need to 4 commitment. First is the commitment is to protection of the environmental and including prevention of the pollution and other specific requirement. Next is the commitment is to fulfill its compliance obligation. Next commitment is continual improvement and provide a framework for setting environmental objective, and next is appropriate to the purpose and context of the organization. Now, other specific commitment to protect the environmental can include sustainable resources, climate change, mitigation, adaptations and protection of biodiversity and ecosystem. The environmental policy should be maintained as documented information, be communicated within the organization and be available to interested parties. Now, next class is 5.3, that is organization role, responsibility and authority. That top management shall ensure that the responsibility and authority for relevant roles are assigned and communicated within the organization. Means top management shall assign the responsibility and authority for ensuring that the EMS conforms to the requirement and this international standard and reporting on the performance of EMS, including the environmental performance to top management. Now, next is the class number 6. In class number 6, that is the planning. Their sub requirement is 6.1, that is 6.1, action to address risk and opportunity. Already I made a video on risk and opportunity in details of basics of ISO and ISO 9001 as well as the IATF 16949, and we can refer that videos. And in this 6.1.1, that is general requirement related to action to address risk and opportunity, that organizations shall establish, implement and maintain the processes needed to meet the requirement. When planning for the environmental management system, the organization shall consider the issues referred to, that is 4.1, that already discussed. 4.2, requirements and of interested parties, needs and expectations, and scope of environmental management system, that is 4.3. Now, and determine the risk and opportunity related to its environmental aspect, compliance obligations, and other issues and requirements that identified in 4.1, 4.2. Now, that's need to address to give assurance that environmental system can achieve its intended outcome, prevent or reduce undesired effect, including the potential for external environmental condition to affect the organization, and achieve continual improvement. Now, within the scope of the environmental management system, the organization shall determine the potential emergency situations that included those that can environmental impact. The organization shall maintain documented information of it, like risk and opportunities that need to be addressed in each areas and each processes, and processes needed in 611 and 614 to extend the necessary to have confidence that they are carried out as planned. Now, next is the 612, that is environmental aspect. Means within the defined scope of the environmental management system, the organization shall determine the environmental aspect of its activity. Already I have made a video of environmental aspect and their impacts. We can refer in details for the environmental aspect and related impacts. Now, the environmental aspect of its activity, product and services that it can control and those that it can influence, and their associated environmental impact considering in life cycle perspective. When determining the environmental aspect, the organization shall take into account what are the things we need to focus in environmental aspect. That is, first is the change including planned or new development or new or modified activity, product or services. Next is the abnormal conditions and reasonably or forcibly emergency situation. Means emergency situation or any changes we need to focus. Now, the organization shall communicate its significant environmental aspect among various level of the function of the organization as appropriate, and organization shall maintain documented information of it, like environmental aspect and their impacts related to other processes, and environmental aspect and associated environmental impacts. Criteria to use determine its significant aspect. Means what are the criteria, guidelines for the significant environmental aspect. We need to maintain a documented information. And significant environmental aspects means criteria, list of significant environmental aspect, and the documented information of environmental aspect and their related impact we need to maintain, and a documented information we need to show during the audits. Now, next class is 613, that is compliance obligation, that is legal requirement and other requirement, that was the administrator. Now, preferred term is compliance obligation, that the organization shall determine and have access to compliance obligations related to its environmental aspect. And second, determine how these compliance obligations apply to the organization. Third is take these compliance obligations into account when stabilizing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improve its EMS. The organization shall maintain a documented information of compliance obligation. Means compliance obligation result in risk and opportunity to the organization. Means we need to focus on compliance obligations. We need to maintain all the documented information related to compliance obligations. What are their legal and others requirements? Now, in Indian environmental legislation, there are water pollution, air pollution, noise pollution, and hazardous substances, environmental and ozone layer depletions. Now, next are the prominent acts like this Water Prevention Act, like Air Prevention Act and Control of Pollution Act, and Environmental Protection Act, and next is National Environmental Tribunal Acts, National Environmental Appellate Authority Act, Motor Vehicle Acts, and Building and Other Construction Workers Employee and Condition of Services. Next is the Contract Level Acts and the Dock Workers Act and the Atomic Energy Act, Mines Act. These are the permanent acts. Now next is the prominent rules, like is the Environmental Protection Rule, hazardous and other waste rules, and manufacturing, storage, imports of the hazardous chemical rules, chemical accidents, biomedical wastes, plastic waste management rules, e-waste management rule, and recycle plastic manufacturing and uses rule, noise pollution amendment rule, ozone depletions rules, batteries rules, public liability insurance rule, the National Environmental Appellate Authority rules, Central Motor Vehicle, Solid Waste Management Rule, and Construction and Demolition Waste Management Rule. These are the rules. Now, next class is 614, that related to planning action. The organization shall plan. First is to take action to address its significant environmental aspect, compliance obligation, risk and opportunity that identified. And second is we need to plan how to integrate the implement the actions into its environmental management system processes or other business processes. Second is evaluate the effectiveness of those actions. When planning these actions, the organization shall consider the technological option of its financial, operational, and business requirement. Now, next is the next class is 6.2, that is environmental objective and planning to achieve them. Their sub clauses is 6.2.1, that is environmental objective. What are the objectives? Means what are the objectives or KPI related to environmental management system. The organization shall establish environmental objectives at relevant function and level, taking into account the organization's significant environmental aspect and associated compliance obligation and consideration its risk and opportunity. The environmental objectives shall be consistent with the environmental policy, measurable, monitored, communicated, updated as appropriate. We need to maintain a documented information on environmental objectives or environmental KPIs or quantifiable characteristic or quantifiable criteria. Now next is the top one is policy related to environmental aspect, legal other requirement, view of the interested parties. Then objective and targets are the output and these are the inputs, like environmental programs are outputs, and other business, operation, finance, technology, environmental aspect, legal requirement, other requirement, view of the interested party. These are the inputs and output is environmental program. Now next is the environmental objective and planning to achieve them. In subclass is 6.2.2, that is planning action to achieve environmental objectives. Then when planning how to achieve its environmental objective, the organization shall determine what will be done, what resources will be required, who will be responsible, and when it will be completed. Now, how result will be evaluated, including indicators for monitoring process toward achievement of its measurable environmental objective. Organization shall consider how action to achieve its environmental objective can be integrated into the organization business processes. Means how we can integrate the organization objectives, environmental objectives to organization business processes. Now next is class is support. Now, seventh class is support. In support, there is subclass that is resources, 7. The organization shall determine and provide the resources needed for the establishment, implementations, maintenance, and continual improvement of the environmental management system. Now, The organization shall next clause is that is competence. Support means resources. What resources needed for the EMS we need to provide. Means environment or organization need to provide, or top management need to provide. Now next is competence. In competence 7.2, that class subclass is 7.2. In competence, the organization shall determine the necessary competence of person doing work under its control that affect the environmental performance, its ability to fulfillment of compliance obligation, ensure these persons are competent on the basis of appropriate education, training or experiences. And next is determine training needs associated with this environmental aspect and environmental management system, that is related to standard, and where applicable take action to acquire the necessary competence and evaluate the effectiveness of the action taken. Now next is the organization shall retain appropriate documented information as evidence of the competence. Means we need to maintain their TNI, their training plans, their training records and effectiveness monitoring of the trainings. Now next is class is 7.3, that is awareness. That is organization shall ensure that the person doing work under the organization control or awareness of the environmental policy and significant environmental aspect, their related impacts, and in their work, that is related to what are the impacts of air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, their contribution to the effectiveness of environmental management system, and including the benefit of enhanced environmental performance and the implications of the not conforming within the environmental management system requirement, including not fulfillment of organization compliance obligation. Now next class is subclass is 7.4, that is communication. The general requirement is organization shall establish, implement, maintain the processes needed for internal or external communication relevant to the environmental management system, that is on what it will communicate, when to communicate, with whom to communicate, how to communicate. Now when established its communication processes, organization shall take account its compliance obligation, ensure the environmental information communicated is consistent with the information generating within the environmental management system and it's reliable. The organization shall respond to relevant communication on its environmental management system. Organization shall retain documented information as evidence of its communication as appropriate. Internal communication. The organization shall internally communicate information relevant to the environmental management system among the various level and function of the organization, including changes to environmental management system as appropriate, ensure its communication processes enables person doing work under the organization control to contribute to continuous improvement. Now next is the 7.4.3, that is external communication. Like internal communication, like communication is with verticals, they are downwards, upwards, horizontals within the departments, within the processes. External communication, like the organization shall externally communicate information relevant to environmental management system as appropriate by the organization communication processes as required by the compliance obligation. Like external communication is like letters, faxes, direct mail, advertisement, videos, website, like brochures. And internal communications like notice, report, memos, face-to-face, emails, like presentations, like that. Next is the documented information, that is 7.5 class. Their sub requirement is subclass is 7.5.1, that is general requirement related to documented information. The organization environmental management system shall include documented information required by the international standard, documented information determined by the organization as being necessary for the effective of EMS. Now next class is 7.5.2, that is creating and updating. While creating and updating documented information, the organization shall ensure appropriate identification and descriptions like title, date, author, reference number. Next is format, language, software version, graphics, media, that is paper, electronic, review and approval for suitability and adequacy. Next is control of documented information. Documented information required by the environmental management system and its by this international standard shall be controlled to ensure it is available and suitable for use, where and when is needed, it is adequately protected, means from being loss of confidentiality, improper use or loss of integrity. Now next is the for control of documented information, the organization shall address the following activity like distributions, access, retrieval and uses, storage and preservations, including preservation of legibility, control of changes like version control, retention and dispositions. Like documented information of external origin determined by the organization to be necessary for the planning and operation of the environmental management system shall be identified and appropriate and controlled. Now next class is operation. Their sub requirement is 8.1, that is operational planning and control. The organization shall establish, implement, control and maintain the processes needed to meet environmental management system requirement and to implement the action identified in 6.1 and 6.2. Stabilizing operating criteria 6.1 and 6. Stabilizing operating criteria for the processes and implement control of the processes in accordance with the operating criteria. 6.1 and 6.2. 6.1 is that is subclasses of the planning phase. That is the 6.2 is objectives environmental, 6.1 is the environmental aspect and impacts. Now control can include engineering control of procedure. Control can implement following hierarchy like eliminations, substitutions, administrative control, and can be used individual or in combination. We can use like these operational controls, we can use a combination or as well as in individual. Now the organization shall control plan changes and review the consequences of unintended changes, taking action to mitigate any adverse effect as necessary. And organization shall also ensure that the outsourced processes are controlled or influences. The type and extent of control influences to be applied to processes shall be defined within the environment management system. Now consist with the life cycle perspective. The environmental organizations shall establish control as appropriate to ensure that environmental requirements and address in design and development of the process, product or service, or considering each life cycle stages from raw material to final disposal. Now next is determine its environmental requirement for the procurement of product and services, and third is communicate its relevant requirement to external provider including contractor also. Next is consider the needs to provide information about potential significant environmental impacts associated with the transportation or delivery, end of life treatment and final disposal of its product and services. And we need to maintain a documented information of the life cycle perspective. Now next is the emergency preparedness and responses, that is 8.2. The organization shall establish, implement and maintain the processes needed to prepare and respond to potential emergency situations that identified already in 6.1. Now organization shall prepare a response by planning action to prevent or mitigate adverse environmental impacts from emergency situations and respond to actual emergency situations. Like third is take action to prevent or mitigate the consequences of emergency situation and appropriate to magnitude of the emergency and potential environmental impacts. We need to periodically test the planned and response action where practicable and periodically review and revise the processes and planned response action in particular after the occurrence of emergency situation or test. Means we need to review, we need to test periodically, we need to conduct We need to take actions to prevent, mitigate the consequences of emergency. Now, next is the provide relevant information and training related to emergency preparedness and responses. Like we need to maintain a documented information to extent necessary, have confidence that the processes is carried out as planned. Means we need to maintain a documented information, like we need to maintain a manual or procedure related to emergency response plan. Now, next class is performance evaluation. Their subclass is 9.1, that is monitoring, measurement, analysis and evaluations of environmental objectives or performances. There are sub requirement is that is 9.11, that is general requirement, that is the organization shall monitor, measure, analyze and evaluate its environmental performance. Now, the organization shall determine what need to be monitored and measured and the method for monitoring, measurement, analysis and evaluation as applicable to ensure valid result, the criteria against which the organization will evaluate its environmental performance and appropriate indicators. And next is when the monitoring and measuring shall be performed, when the result from monitoring and measurement shall be analyzed and evaluated. The organization shall ensure that the calibrated or verified monitoring and measurement equipment is used, maintained as appropriate. The organization shall evaluate its environmental performance and effectiveness of environmental management system. Now, organizations shall communicate relevant information, performance informations both internally and externally as intended in its communication processes as acquired with compliance obligation. Organizations shall retain appropriate document information as evidence of the monitoring, measurement, analysis and means we need to a documented information of their KPIs and trends. Next is the evaluation of compliances, like 9.12, that is very important. How we can evaluate the compliances obligations. Means the organization shall establish, implement and maintain the processes needed to evaluate fulfillment of compliance obligation. Like the organization shall determine the frequency that compliance will be evaluated and evaluated compliance and actions taken if necessary are needed. Maintain knowledge and understanding of compliance status. Organization shall retain a documented information evidence of compliance results. Next is the internal audit, that is 9.2 and 9.21, that is general requirement related to internal audit. The organization shall conduct internal audit at a planned interval to provide information on whether the environmental management system conform to environmental own requirements, its environmental management requirement and the requirement of international standard and the effectively implemented and maintained. Next is the is effectively implemented and maintained. Means we need to first to confirm the environmental and own requirement, EMS requirement, international requirement, and second is effectively implemented and maintained. And next is the 9.22, that is internal audit program. The organization shall establish, implement and maintain an internal audit programs including the frequency, method, responsibility, planning, requirement and reporting of internal audits. We need to mention. Where establish the internal audit program, the organization shall take into the consideration the environmental importance of the processes concerned, changes affecting the organization and the result of previous audits. Now, next is the organization shall define the audit criteria, audit scope of each audit, select auditors and conduct audit to ensure objectivity and the impartiality of the audit processes. And we need to ensure that the result of the audits are reported to relevant management. The organization shall retain a documented information as evidence of the implemented of the audit program and audit results. Means what are the audit plans and their audit evidences and their NC management and their closing and review. This we need to ensure and show the as a evidence during the audits. Now, next is the management review. The top management shall review the organization environmental management system as planned interval to ensure its continuity, suitability, adequacy and effectiveness. Now, the management shall include consideration of the status of the action from previous management review and changes in internal or external issue, environmental management system related to the needs and expectations of interested parties, including compliance obligation, the significant environmental aspect and risk and opportunities. And next is the extent to which environmental objectives have been achieved, and information on organization environmental performance, including trends in non-conformity or corrective action, monitoring measurement results, fulfillment of compliance obligation, audit results. These are the trends information. Next is adequacy of resources, means adequacy of resources for the trainings or EMS developments related to EMS development or infrastructure related. Next is the relevant communication from interested party, including complaints, opportunity for continual improvement. These are the some inputs that we need to mention in management review. Now, next is the output of the management, that shall also include the conclusion on the continuity, suitability, adequacy and effectiveness of environmental management system, like decision related to continual improvement opportunity, decision related to any needs for changes to environmental management system, including resources. Now, next class is improvement, that is 10th class, that is improvement. Their sub requirement is given in 10(1), that is general requirement. The organization shall determine opportunity for improvement and implement necessary action to achieve the intended outcome of environment management system. Now, 10(2), that is the non-conformity and corrective action. That clause is related to non-conformity and corrective action. When a non-conformity occurs, the organization shall react to the non-conformity as applicable. First is take action to control or correct it. Second is deal with the consequences, including mitigation adverse or environmental impacts. Now, next is the evaluate the needed for action to eliminate the causes of non-conformity in order that it does not reoccur or occur elsewhere. And next is the implement any action needed and review the effectiveness of corrective action taken and make changes to environmental management system if necessary. Next is corrective action which are taken shall be appropriate to be significant of effect of non-conformity encountered, including the environmental impacts. The organization shall retain a documented information as evidence of the nature of the non-conformity and any subsequent action taken and the result of corrective action. Now, next subclass is 10(3), that is continual improvement. The organization shall continually improve the suitability, adequacy and effectiveness of the environment management system to enhance environmental performance. Means we need, what are the our environmental KPIs? We need to continually improve. Means during the recurring activity, means during the time we need to improve, sustain, that continual improvement process, and that we need to maintain or enhance our the environmental performances or KPIs. These are the some clauses and their requirement, like 4.3 that is scope, and 5.2 that is environmental policy, 6.11 that is risk and opportunity, 6.12 is environmental aspect, 6.13 compliance application, 6.21 is that is environmental objective, 7.2 competence, 7.3 is communication, operational planning and control, that is 8.1, 8.2 is emergency preparedness, that is 6.11, that is we need to make procedure, that action to address risk and opportunity, communication, that also need to prepare, and 8.1 that is operational planning and control, 8.2 that is emergency preparedness and response, 9.12 evaluation of compliance, we need to make a procedure. Next is that is monitor, measurement and analysis 911. 912 is evaluation of compliances. 922 the internal audit program. 93 management review. 102 is non-conformity and corrective action. These all are related to ISO 14001 2015. Thank you very much. Please like and subscribe it.